This is News Conference Extra with Conan Nolan.
Good morning and welcome to News Conference Extra, a special segment of Today in L.A. Weekend. With us, the Honorable Brad Sherman, member of the House of Representatives, a Democrat from Sherman Oaks. He's a member of the House Foreign Relations Committee and also partly responsible for representation of Porter Ranch, which, first of all, Congressman, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. And although I'm known as Brad Sherman from Sherman Oaks, and I will always be from Sherman Oaks, we moved up to Porter Ranch about a year ago.
So you actually live in that neighborhood?
We live about as close as anybody to well.
Have you been smelling the gas?
We smell it some of the times.
And your neighbors?
A next-door neighbor has a bit of asthma. He evacuated months ago.
Okay. We're talking, of course, about the natural gas leak in Porter Ranch, which has lasted months and has resulted in all sorts of consternation, both for the residents there and for the gas company.
Well, you know, this has been going on for over 3 months. They have a kill well that's being drilled. It's a difficult thing to do. They're relatively confident that it will work. They're also drilling a second kill well, just in case the first one doesn't work. What I'm skeptical about is they should be withdrawing the natural gas as quickly as they possibly can. That's the only thing that's going to be successful until you get the kill well to operate. They've reduced pressure, but now it looks like they're going to stop withdrawing natural gas, and they view the natural gas in the facility as an asset. We in Porter Ranch view it as a toxin.
Well, it's the natural gas for Southern California.
It is
It's
indeed
the storage place. So anybody in this viewing audience that turns on the gas on their stove or heats their water for the shower, that's where it's coming from.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't get rid of it.
Well, longer term, who knows where we'll store natural gas. We should never be dependent upon just one storage facility. But the governor's order is to pull the natural gas out of that facility as quickly as you can to reduce the pressure. And the PUC, which works for the governor, just announced that they're going to ignore the governor's order and have them not withdraw natural gas starting next week.
This is mostly a state regulatory issue.
Mm-hmm.
What does the federal government have to do with it?
Well, first, FASMA should be regulating these storage
FASMA.
FASMA.
What's that?
That is the Pipeline and Hazardous Materials Safety Transportation Agency under the U.S. Department of Transportation.
And they should?
They should have nationwide standards for gas storage. They have good nationwide standards for gas transportation, at least decent standards. But they have punted to the state when it comes to the storage.
Some of your neighbors want it closed, just closed, no more.
It is closed now.
Right, but
the question is whether it will be allowed to reopen. And the people in the industry just assume that it will be reopened in a few months.
Well, if you don't reopen it, where do you get the natural gas that fuels the homes of millions of Californians?
Well, most of the natural gas is piped in and never goes into storage, or a big chunk of it. But yes, you're going to have a problem either way. You either have until we have safe storage, it's hard to know how to run a natural gas system. But we're very dependent on Aliso Canyon, and they've got to make it safe before they start injecting more gas into it.
You're on the federal side. What is your assessment of how state and local authorities and regulatory bodies, the job they have done when it comes to not just this leak, but regulating it prior to the leak?
Prior to the leak, the regulation was incredibly old-fashioned and lax. For example, this one well had a subsurface safety valve in it that was removed in 1979 and never replaced. The regulations say you don't need such a valve unless you're within a couple hundred feet of a home or school, because they thought that the only thing to worry about with natural gas was it might explode or burn. They didn't realize that when you have this amount of natural gas coming out with the impurities that are in it, you're going to have a health problem as many as 5 miles away.
Let's move on to something else very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
There was a exchange of prisoners
mm-hmm.
between the United States and Iran. There were
mm-hmm.
4 dual citizens,
mm-hmm.
U.S. citizens and Iranian citizens, who were released from custody in exchange for individuals that we held back to Iran. What was your opinion about that?
Look, it's just a great thing for the families involved. And these families have waited
We know
years.
that in terms of the power and the prestige and the relationship with Iran.
I think we paid a very heavy price because Iran is barred from getting nuclear and missile technology around the world. They need front companies to act as evaders to get the technology they need to develop a nuclear weapon earlier than the deal would allow them, and missiles. And now they can turn to their evasion network and say, if you get caught, we'll get you out. And Iran's pro-Iranian militias in Baghdad have already seized 3 new American hostages. So they are ready should their people get caught.
You're a supporter of the current administration, of course, a loyal Democrat. Give us a grade on how the Obama administration has dealt with Iran and the potential for that country to dominate Middle Eastern politics the way it wants to.
I'm not here. I'm not the to grade the president, but I will say this. I disagreed with the Iran deal, but I think it's now important that we are free to sanction Iran to try to change its non-nuclear behavior. You turn on the TV, you see the people dying in Syria. You got to ask why. It's because Assad is supported by Iran. And now that Iran has an extra $130 billion, we cannot ignore what Iran is doing in Yemen and in Syria and say, well, we have a nuclear deal, so we're not going to try to change your behavior in Syria.
Let's end with one political question. You've endorsed Hillary Clinton for president. She is neck and neck in Iowa, that vote coming up, and in New Hampshire. From what we understand, she's trailing. Would Bernie Sanders make a competent nominee for the Democratic Party as far as you're concerned?
I support Hillary, and I think she would be our best nominee. I think we're at a disadvantage in the first 3 states because caucus states is a better venue for the Sanders campaign, and also New Hampshire is right next door to Vermont. But once we get through those first 3 contests and we get to the primaries on Super Tuesday and the primary in South Carolina, I think the Clinton campaign will do very, very well.
You've served with Bernie Sanders.
Absolutely.
Would he be a capable commander-in-chief?
I think so, and yet I would disagree with him on some elements of foreign policy. And when you say competent, I've got to say compared to what? Compared to Donald Trump? Compared to Ted Cruz? Bernie Sanders would do an outstanding job as President of the United States.
The Honorable Brad Sherman, a Democrat of Sherman Oaks and also Port Aransas.